call. It's 10:32 a.m. We will begin this work session of the Lake County Board of County Commissioners. On the agenda for today is the 2025 legislative overview and updates, led by Elizabeth Rosen, who is our Political Advocacy Incorporated representative. Thank you, Elizabeth. Nice to see you.
Hello, everyone. Are we ready to just dig in?
Yeah.
Sounds
Yes.
great. I want to make sure to introduce you to Alan Morse, who is also with my office, and he helps with a lot of our budget stuff. So he will be joining us in meetings because budget is going to be a big part of the conversations as we move forward here. We had hoped to have kind of a summary and a slide deck to walk you through a little bit on special session, but unfortunately they didn't end until last night. So they started last Thursday. I think pretty much everyone lost their bets. Everyone thought it was going to be 5 days, and it ended up being 6 days. In part because there was just a lot of drama going on between these legislators down at the Capitol. So as an overview and reminder, the main point of special session was to try to address some of the changes to tax credits that happened in HR 1, which was the federal bill that from the Trump administration. And the impacts to Colorado somewhere in the $800 million range in current fiscal year. So the tax credits that they were going after during this special session totaled about $253 million to try to get at. They're trying to take this money in kind of three-part chunks to address it. So they were able to pass all those tax credits. There was so much drama in other places of the legislature that actually the tax package didn't get a whole lot of attention, and it kind of just sailed through to a certain degree. So those passed, they're able to collect additional revenue in the tune of about $250 million. Which means that they only have about $530 million to go between now and next session when they have to start the next round of budget work. Some of the main things that we were really focused on and kept an eye out, they had a large conversation around wolves and the impact to communities. And no one was expecting that to be such a big part of the special session conversation, but it sure was. And then there was also House Bill 1006. And we will pass this all along in a summary to you all once we get a chance to put it together. But House Bill 1006 was part of the hospital health insurance affordability enterprise. And this is about $100 million that they are trying to raise in order to help shore up reinsurance and deal with the fact that insurance rates, especially on the Western Slope, have gone so high and out of control. And the projections of what we've seen this summer, they're anticipating somewhere in the range of your area of 30 to 38% increases in health insurance. So that bill was to try to tackle and get at that issue a little bit. Then there was the tax credit bills, and then legislation around artificial intelligence. So we've talked to this a little bit because in 2024, Senate Bill 205 passed, which made a lot of changes to how both developers, so those who are creating the AI, and then deployers, those who are using the AI, would interact with consumers to have notifications and other things. It became apparent when that rushed through in the last couple days of the 2024 session that it wasn't just a tech bill, but it impacted a lot of other entities. And so there was an attempt to delay the start of it at the end of the 2025 regular session that unfortunately failed. And so since the governor was calling a special session, he did go ahead and put AI into his call, in part because the bill, as they were unpacking it, they realized had about a $6 to $7 million fiscal note. So that was kind of the tie-in that made sense for them to be able to put it into the call. But it was really because they were trying to do something to change it, because without a change right now, The law would go into effect February 1st. And you all, as a county and as a deployer, anytime you use AI, would have had to do a lot of different regulations and administrative burdens because at this point, AI is in everything, right? We come on this Zoom and it says that we have AI possibly recording this conversation. And so it's just embedded everywhere. And the challenge that people are facing right now is finding that balance between having technology and moving forward, using it responsibly and protecting consumers. And it's been quite the battle watching that unfold. Ultimately, there was legislation that passed that delays the impact of Senate Bill 205. So you won't have to do anything regarding this law. It delays it until June 30th, 2026. The hope is that there can be more conversations over the next couple months and a bill is run next session to really try to figure out that balance. And a big part of the focus is on the fact that right now, as 205 is written, a lot of the burden falls on deployers and not developers. In addition, a lot of the liability for getting things incorrect under the law again falls under the deployers and not under the developers. And I think people generally are realizing that that is not a fair structure because instead of holding some of the bigger tech companies accountable, it is leaving you all as counties and school districts and hospitals and other entities that are just deployers exposed to more liability than you should be for a developer's potential discrimination within the AI system. Um, and then, going with the drama, the AI bill was the Senate Majority Leader's, Senate Robert Rodriguez, his bill and his legacy, and he is wanting this to be adopted in other states. So he's very attached to it. Um, when he saw that he was going to have trouble holding his bill in the form that he wanted it to, he ended up changing out members on the Appropriations Committee, including a joint budget committee member, which that doesn't happen. And so he got a lot of really bad press for changing committee assignments simply to get his pet project through. Um, and so there was a lot of turmoil over in the Senate. And then you saw over in the House on the last day of special session, they had a discussion about an inappropriate image that a Republican had shared about one of the Democratic lawmakers that led to a lot of threats against her. That legislator that took the photo and circulated it did resign, so he's gone. But it caused a lot of conflict between the two chambers and ended with last night the minority leader in the House and the majority leader in the House basically arguing at the mic in the House chamber, and then the minority leader storming out of the chamber. So it doesn't feel like they're going to be communicating very well going into the next regular session. And a lot of us are worried about how next session is going to go with the two of them not coordinating about calendars and how things would move forward. That was special session. We want to be able to field some questions, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing with the upcoming budget. And then the third point we want to hit is legislative engagement. So we want to pause on the special session before we get to some of those other points and see if you have any questions or thoughts we can answer for you. It's a mess.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a polite way to say that exactly that.
Can I just ask a process question? Like how can you have such a big conversation about wolves if that wasn't on the call?
So they tied it, Alan, you probably know more about this because they did make a budget connection to it.
Yeah, the tie-in that they used was that the implementation that the money that DNR needs to implement the wolves, that this was a budget reduction strategy. So
Hmm.
that's how they tied it in. That's not how the bill ended up. They ended up just taking the general fund away, but allowing DNR to use other sources. So it got a little convoluted and doesn't really tie into special session.
I was in a Mountain District meeting for county commissioners, and the original budget for wolf reintroduction was around 800,000. And now they've spent $8 million. And a lot of those ranchers that our county commissioners feel that we've met the voters' intent to reintroduce the wolves, and that there's no real amount, like we don't have to reintroduce 1,000, that we've already tried. Anyway, and then my other comment is it's disappointing that they're not looking at cuts. With a bloated budget that's doubled since, in the last 8 years. And instead they're just looking at, rating the reserves and also, trying to increase revenue. And doesn't one of those things have to go to a vote? In November, one of their increased revenue sources would have to go to a vote. Am I understanding that correctly?
Sure, so that bleeds into the next topic, which is budget. You are correct. This special session was about tax credits to raise revenue. We will be seeing tomorrow a budget package from the Office of State Planning and Budgeting Director, Mark Ferrandino. He will be presenting to the Joint Budget Committee an attempt to find $300 million in cuts. So that will be the next round of conversations. And typically those are done through the Joint Budget Committee and the legislative process. This is going to just be done by executive order of the governor. So he's going to come in and announce and say, these are the things that are getting cut. One of the things that we think is top of the list, unfortunately, is going to be Medicaid provider rates, because during the 2025 session, they were able to increase by 1.6% the amount going to Medicaid provider rates. And so they will be clawing that back, because that's a significant chunk of money that they can cut to get at the other $300 million. Where others are going to come from through that call is a little bit unclear. I think higher education is probably vulnerable, because it's one of the few things that constitutionally the state doesn't have to fund. But to your point, Commissioner, about the ballot initiative, so the Healthy School Meal Program that passed by voters, 2 years ago, did not raise enough money to offset the amounts that schools are paying to provide the meals. And so there is a structure going to the ballot in November to raise additional dollars to fund that program, so that school districts aren't operating it at a loss, and or so that they don't have to make changes to reduce the program. Right now, every student gets a free meal for lunch, and in a lot of places also breakfast, but definitely for lunch. What they also did during the special session was they added in a component to fund the SNAP program at the state level. The thought was that HR1 took away some of the federal funding that goes to the state for SNAP. So they're trying to do a combination of raising money at the ballot in November, both for the healthy school meals for students, and then also for the SNAP program at the state level for those reimbursements. Does that help answer the ballot question a little bit?
Mhm. So what will the ballot question ask specifically? For more funding for all students to get a free lunch? And not everyone all the students in Colorado, I don't think need free lunch. I mean, maybe some of them could pay for their own lunch. I don't know. Don't let me derail this, I'm just talking.
I mean, Matt, we know
No,
that
yeah.
in Lake County, the school district pays $200,000 to make up the gap between the ballot initiative that was previously passed and actually being able to provide those meals. So that's $200,000 that will help come from all over the state to make up for the local taxpayer cost that's already being funded.
Okay.
Schools ended up in a precarious position because a ballot initiative passed that said healthy school meals for all, but they didn't have enough money to do it. And so schools ended up being caught in this dynamic where parents had the expectation that this was happening, but they weren't actually getting the funding. So for the last year and a half, the state has been taking money out of the state education fund in order to keep school districts whole to a certain degree, but that they could only do that for so long to the point. And so there is a gap that is happening in funding. And if something doesn't pass in November to increase the funding, school districts in the state can't carry that cost much anymore. And so if it doesn't pass, then in December, we anticipate that you'll see pretty large reductions to the programs, or the alternative, which I think is more likely to happen, is schools will just continue to figure out how to do it, and it'll eat up more and more of their budget moving forward, unfortunately.
So it equates to like a partially unfunded mandate for the schools instead of, we're looking at it always from the county's lens, but sometimes I forget that some of these things affect more than just local governments and municipalities and counties. It's now the schools on the hook for the bill for a state legislation.
It's not for state legislation, for a voter passed ballot initiative,
Okay,
for something we voted for.
Yeah.
And not attach the right amount of funding
So that
to
adds a-
fully fund, so
that's a
it's
serious
an
level of
unfunded
complexity.
mandate from the citizens.
So will
Yeah.
it be a sales tax or an income tax, or how
It
what's
has
the
to be
mechanism?
property tax, cause it's
Property
school,
tax.
right, Elizabeth?
Well, no, not in this one actually. This one is actually sliding. It's based on a tax on your income, on personal income, is how they structured this originally, and that's how they're continuing to move forward. Alan, do you have it in your brain, the details on that? I don't know the exact details of how they
No,
structured
it
it.
is above a certain income threshold. They're getting taxed a little bit more, and I believe that's still the case for the new ballot initiative. They're just increasing the amount of money that the state is able to collect. When they do a ballot measure, they have to guess how much money they need, and that's where the imbalance came from, is that the state just underestimated how much they would need, and because of Tabor, they can't collect anymore without going back to the voters.
Mhm.
Additionally, with the budget that we anticipate this week, the announcements tomorrow will also, to the commissioner's point, be part reserve. So, and the chunks of money they're trying to make up, we did the tax credits during the special session. They'll announce actual cuts to programs and a list of those tomorrow, and then an additional about 250 to 300 million from the state reserves. Right now, the state reserves are, Alan, check my math. Are we at 15%?
Yeah, it's at a 15% reserve right now. They want to decrease that by 2.5 percentage points, and that'll get them about 250, $300 million. My guess is that they will go on the higher range because the cuts that they're going to have to make, they did a lot of the one-time cuts last year to programs. So any cuts that they make now are going to be a lot more difficult, and they have a structural deficit that they need to solve. So my guess is that they'll pull a little bit more from the reserves to not have to do as many cuts.
You guys are like my closest window into this world that is the state level politics. So I'm gonna ask you kind of a random
Yeah.
question, using my imagination a little bit. If you two were in charge of where to make budget cuts, where do you think the most frivolous or kind of ridiculous state spending is? And where would you think the best cuts could be made at?
Well, I think the governor did a good job of backtracking his big, beautiful bridge that he was proposing to make. They were looking at about $40 million for a bridge to go over one street between the Capitol and the Denver court mayor's office. And there's a park there. And so pulling that funding back was probably a good call, and saying that they weren't going to do that anymore moving forward. I think what they're going to start looking at is a lot of they're going to start really looking closely at state departments and seeing what additional employees are there. If there are things, it's a hard balance because with the changes in HR1, there's going to probably need to be a significant increase to staff at HICPUF, which has already grown a ton. I think in the governor's term, since he's been there the last 7 years, HICPUF, the size of HICPUF in terms of employees and whatnot has grown 30%. So it's had a big growth, but with the changes in HR1, it'll probably need more. And then that's also an area that we're looking at closely because that will also impact county admin. You all are going to have to do a lot more work when it comes to verifying Medicaid for your citizens and your community. The frivolous one is a hard question, so I'm going to kick it over to Alan because other than the bridge, I don't know how to answer it.
Okay,
Well,
that really helps. Go ahead,
yeah, I
Alan.
think where they will be looking is a lot at the increased costs of Medicaid. It's now the largest chunk of the state budget. We spend more on that than we do K-12. And then other than that, the only levers they can pull really are K-12 or higher ed, other than HICPUF. And I don't think they want to cut K-12, so I think higher ed is where they're going to look.
Okay, great. Thank you guys both for answering my random questions like that.
Quick question I had, with some of this special session legislation, especially with the proposal, I think, to dip in to take a loan from the unclaimed property trust fund and stuff, are y'all hearing anything or anticipating any litigation being filed to challenge any of this stuff?
So they ended up pulling back the proposal of taking money from the unclaimed trust fund for House Bill 1006. Where they ended up landing instead is that, so I didn't realize this was a thing, but apparently when you do tax credits, there are groups out there and entities that will buy those. And so there's $100 million of tax credits that are going to be sold to outside entities in order to raise the money for House Bill 1006, which will help with the reinsurance program and some of those other health insurance places. So they ended up leaving the unclaimed property tax fund alone, and that didn't end up going forward.
Okay, good, because that's the first, I didn't see the latest update from last night, but when I saw that was one of the proposals, I was just like,
Yep.
okay, that could go well.
Yeah, things were moving really quick.
Yeah.
And the speaker, one of your representatives, was on that piece of legislation, made it a big priority to try to work on insurance rates
Yeah.
in the Western Slope. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions on budget? Okay, great. So then the other thing that we will be talking about, and we've already started initial conversations with Candace and Chris over, is legislative engagement coming up in this next session. Obviously, any bills being put forward that require money will be dead because they have no money. We will be looking out and playing a lot of defense because we're concerned about potential further unfunded mandates. So we stay engaged with CCI and CCAT very closely. Definitely want to make sure that those organizations are on your radars. CCI has a pretty detailed process that they use for counties to bring forward potential legislative ideas. I believe they've already had their initial district meeting in your area about a week or two ago. But they will be here coming up in a couple weeks in mid-September, having some steering committee meetings. And then by October 3rd, they will meet to set their actual legislative agenda. So if there are things that you're interested in, a great avenue is taking it to CCI and pitching it for it to become part of the CCI agenda. It just gets you a little bit more backup there. So if there are things that you are considering as the county, you might want to take a look at those processes to see if you can get some of those larger organizations to bring those forward for you.
I attend all the steering committee meetings, just FYI.
And I think it's, you know, a lot of those meetings, there are a handful of counties that are very active and involved. And I think you all making a purposeful effort to join committees within those organizations would be incredibly helpful because you have that unique experience of having having being an expensive place to live, but also not being a resort community. And I think that voice is not as known within those organizations to the degree it probably should be. Yeah. And that gets us through our update. Again, apologies that we couldn't put this all on paper for you before this morning. I've been running on, they started on Thursday, and most nights we didn't get out of there until midnight. And then when I woke up this morning, I was like, reached out to Candace and I said, I'm pretty sure we have a meeting, but I don't remember what's happening. I'm so sorry. So thank you for your patience as we had to walk through this and not have something prepared to show you.
No, that's awesome, Elizabeth, thank you so
A-okay.
much. You deserve some rest.
Yes.
Yes, we're gonna sleep.
That's it.
Yeah. And you know, you guys are good at painting the picture with your words well enough that, you
Oh,
know,
good,
visual aids, we're not sorely missed.
good. Thank you. Candace, did you have anything else that you wanted us to hit on or discuss?
I know that one thing you guys had wondered is how to, I guess, be a little more involved or know what things you guys could bring to CCI was a request I think you had
Yeah.
along that.
From our staff. If we are the conduit to CCI, CC4A, CCAT,
Mhm.
you know, CTSI, not CTSI, whatever the ski
The
towns,
area.
Mhm.
then I think I need to understand our internal processes for how we know what legislation is in the way or could help alleviate the stress of our county staff. And that's the part that I
think sometimes staff is gonna know when those things are coming up, like Laura that's really involved with CCI, which is how she usually knows what's coming up.
Right.
They're really not gonna know if they're not involved with CCI and CCAT. I think you guys are gonna often know that things are headed at staff
Yeah.
before staff knows they're likely headed at them.
I mean the ones that can generate from us. Am I being clear? I'm like, if Laura's like, nobody is talking about this, but this could really change everything, or everybody's talking about this, but no county wants to be the one to bring it forward. How do they come to us to be like, hey, will you please do this? Or say Michael's, I don't know, Michael comes up with something, he's like, this is really getting in our way. How does,
Usually they would tell me and I would say something to you guys, but often, I mean, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think staff is gonna know that legislative things are coming at them before commissioners would know, hey, this is being discussed by counties and it could impact counties. Hearing that from other people at CCI and CCAT, am I incorrect there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously, when we hear stuff, start passing it along to you all that could be coming and could be impactful. Um, you know, if the staff is able to attend some of these meetings as well as the commissioners. So that way sometimes, you know, it might be good to kind of coordinate calendars of, you know, the commissioner can't make it this time, so staff listens in, or vice versa. You know, just kind of making sure everything's covered. I know when you have a small team and a lot of different meetings, it's hard to have multiple people from the team be there at the same time. But a lot of that can help with the back and forth. And in terms of, you know, CCI has a specific process and a form that you can fill out if you have legislative ideas to bring forward for them to consider. I think, Commissioner, you mentioned being on the steering committee, which is great. So you're going to have a lot of visibility into a number of the things that this counties are bringing forward. What I have seen in the past is often CCI and CCAT will come up with a list of things that they want to take on as the statewide organizations. And then we can, other counties will take a look at what didn't make the statewide association list and decide if they want to take them on individually, often with the background support of the statewide associations, but not as their bill leading it. So a lot of that starts to kind of get sorted out in that September, October timeframe, where priorities for the associations themselves get picked, and then other counties are able to see what did and did not make that list, and then come up with decisions on what they want to move forward with on their own.
And I'll just say too, that the County Attorneys Association usually engages pretty heavily too in some of this. And there's a group that is pretty much formed there to track some stuff, and especially, as Liz was saying, if it looks like, CCI is not going to champion something that the county feels important, then a lot of times the County Attorneys Association will engage to help with that effort as well.
Okay, I'm gonna try to restate this.
Okay.
Okay. No, it's okay. I do understand the advocacy piece from the advocacy groups and how we can engage with them and how that process works. My question is, so in the latest CCAT meeting that was discussing, it was just a conversation about proposed legislation from the counties and what we wanted the lobbyists to potentially put onto their priorities survey so that we could prepare for the next legislative session, not the special session, the next legislative session. Various counties brought forward pieces of legislation that had never existed before, that the legislature was not talking about, that was not coming from the Attorneys Association, but was specifically, and I'll use Clear Creek as an example. Clear Creek being one of the more active groups. Clear Creek wants to create a rec enterprise where you can tax services, which currently cannot, specific to recreation. And I was like, wow, that's brilliant. And that was developed within the Clear Creek County staff. I am wondering, what is our internal process for when do we come up with ideas?
When staff comes up with ideas, we bring them to you.
Do they know that?
Yes, I'm sure if staff wanted you guys to go and advocate for legislative pieces, they would bring it to me in our discussions, and then we bring it to you guys. But
Okay.
I think our staff
Should we pause
We
it?
we have room for improvement there.
yes.
Yeah, and that's what I
But
guess,
also, I think you have to recognize like who
I recognize that, I guess.
so I think if they have those ideas, they are gonna be brought to you. But it's just a place for growth for us, and also, I don't know how much Clear Creek that was brought from staff or how much of that was brought from the commissioners.
Totally, it could have been both.
And wait,
My curiosity is around like, if we don't say that there's a process, do people feel empowered to execute this initiative? And it's not it doesn't have to be a process conversation, maybe
Yeah.
it's just a cultural conversation, and maybe it's a multi-generational process conversation. I'm just saying that I think it's worth having the conversation. It's really professionalized and streamlined and follows very specific rules and structures from each one of these different advocacy groups. And someday it would be cool to know what our internal culture is around us being able to advocate for our staff through these groups, not just to respond to what's being created outside of this building.
Right.
Yep.
Does
And
that-
Candace, we can, yep, I'm following you now. Apologies. Little sleep deprived. Yes, we can help with that. So obviously that is a process that kind of organically happened with you all last a year ago, which is how we got the MOU jail legislation going, right? But to your point, that is something that can be put together and more formalized. Alan, I believe, has some templates that he can share with your team on, here's how to organize feedback on bills, sending them out, making sure that as you guys are looking at different pieces of legislation, you know where the other counties are, but then also helping with that process of making sure that staff understands that you guys are in a more proactive place now, to kind of that cultural shift that you were talking about of, if you're having pain points, here's how you bring them forward so we can discuss them. So we can get some of those templates that then Candace and team can tweak and make them more your own for internal structures.
Yes, please, that
That would be
sounds
great.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting that question vocalized, because it is
Sorry,
something
it's
that
so
would be
confusing.
great to implement, not only for us, but for future commissioners in these chairs to kind of be able to carry on and have a stronger voice with our advocates.
I have this
Yep.
impression that there are some things that we are required to do, and we have some staff who will just grind it out, like just do it because they're supposed to do it. And if there's any way that, and especially now with a county manager, and I think like a bigger opportunity for us to be advocating for streamlining, it's like, well, cool, well, how much of that can we stop doing? How much of that could we help you stop doing by doing our jobs with the state legislature?
And
That's
if
that's the direction I'd like to move over the next years. This is not a now problem.
And if something's that big of a issue or an inefficiency situation within our county, how many other counties can be helped by bringing certain issues to light and advocating for changes at the state level?
The amount of times I get asked by, I feel like we as commissioners get asked by federal representatives, both in the Senate, like in Congress, and then also at the state legislature, to like bring us stories, tell us how, tell us why. I'm like, I don't know, but that's probably a problem. And maybe I don't even know that it is a problem for us, but if I had an avenue from our staff to be like, yeah, this is cuckoo pants, and it's way worse than you even understand, then I would be like, sweet, I have some stories for you. Please use our story. I think that will be helpful in the future. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Candace, for
Yeah.
sticking with me through that.
Perfect. Anything else that we should be talking through in this moment?
I don't have any further questions that I can think of on wolves or anything else.
Sounds great. We are getting a regular cadence of meetings set with your staff, so that they can feel plugged in, and then Alan will work on getting some of those template documents over to you as well.
And we'll have a report on special session over to you all so that you can read if you'd like.
Great.
Yes. Sleep first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much. It was good to see you
Guys,
all
everything
remotely.
you do.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
It is 11:11. We will conclude this work session of Lake County Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, staff. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.